Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this full council meeting. Today is the 23rd of February 2023. I'd like to welcome you all and any members of the public who are currently watching from the stands or watching on YouTube. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to update you on the systems being used and confirm that officers and remote attendants are present.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to do a quick roll call to check that the officers attending online can hear and be heard. I think we should only have one officer tonight, and that's Anthony Roach.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm here.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance online that I haven't called out? Okay, so if a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted for your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. The normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. At this evening's meeting, the item 10 budgetary vote, all votes, including that on any amendments, will be by a recorded vote. The electronic voting system will record these votes. There will be no roll call of members for each vote. Are there any questions before we start? Okay, I'll hand back to the chair.
Thank you very much, and a warm welcome, Eleanor, to North Herts Council. We'll move on to agenda item 1. Apologies for absence. Apologies received from Councillors Stanier and Councillor Tart. Can I see if there are any other apologies, please? Councillor Bloxham.
I've got two apologies from Councillor Fayfrost and Dewan Cowell.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Apologies from Councillor Claire Billing.
Thank you, Councillor Muir.
I apologise for Dewan Cowell. Oh, I didn't.
And Councillor Strong.
Yes, thank you. Can I give apologies for Councillor Davies? And I'm assuming that Councillor Moody is working, so that he won't be here either.
Councillor Barnard is present, if that could just be noted. And I understand apologies may have been received by Councillor Backer as well. Agenda item 2. Yeah, Councillor George Davies, yeah. I think. Agenda item 2, minutes from the 19th of January 2023. I propose we take as read and approve as a true record of proceedings the minutes of the meetings held on the 19th of January 2023. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Dennis Harburg.
Yes, happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on the minutes? Anything that anybody would like to raise? I am not seeing any indication. So could we therefore vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, notification of other business. There has been no other business advised. Agenda item 4, everybody's favourite agenda item, Chair's announcement. Number 1, audio recording. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recordings will be available to view on ModGov and video via YouTube after the meeting. Climate emergency. Members are reminded that this council has declared a climate emergency. This is a serious decision and means that as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. Rules of debate. Please can I remind you that the normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. No speeches may be made after the mover has moved a motion and explained the purpose of it until the motion has been seconded. When seconding a motion or amendment, a member may reserve their speech until later in the debate. In accordance with the Constitution, please can members ensure that no speech exceeds 5 minutes without prior consent from me, which has been given tonight or somebody. Comfort break. For the purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate in consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business of the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. I'll take a comfort break at an appropriate time in the meeting should proceedings continue at length. Chair's civic event. The Chair's civic event scheduled for the 19th of March 2023 has been cancelled. Instead, a link to a donations page for my 2 chosen charities, Together for Short Lives and Hearts Welcomes Refugees, will be circulated, and I would be most grateful if you were able to make a donation to these 2 worthwhile charities. 7. North Herts Heroes Awards. The North Herts Heroes Awards ceremony will take place on Friday the 3rd of March 2023 and will be available to watch on the North Herts Council YouTube channel. Change of date for the next full council meeting. The council meeting on the 30th of March 2023 has been moved to April the 18th, 2023. This date change is to allow for a report to be brought on possible constitutional amendments which need to be considered ahead of the annual council meeting. Voter ID. You'll note that you have some flyers and posters in front of you regarding photo ID being required in polling stations in May. We would really appreciate your help to promote this by displaying them in any community buildings or notice boards that you may have access to. Please obtain permission first if you are to do so, though, and please don't fly tip these posters or fly post them. No fly postering. Moving on to agenda item 5, public participation. We have not received any petitions or public requests to make presentations at this meeting. Agenda item 6, questions from members. There have been no questions submitted by members. Agenda item 7, notice of motions. There have been no motions submitted. Agenda item 8, items referred from other committees. I will take agenda item 8A, referral from Cabinet Revenue Budget 23-24, and 8B, referral from Cabinet Investment Strategy, Integrated Capital and Treasury, with item 10 and 11 consecutively. Agenda item 8C, referral from Overview and Scrutiny, Women's Safety Charter. Can I please call upon the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, Councillor David Levitt, to present?
Thank you, Chair. This was a recommendation that came through from Overview and Scrutiny. We had a very good presentation from the police and other authorities, and also from the citizens' advice on various aspects of community safety and scams and all sorts of stuff. It was a very good meeting, actually, well worth the while. Instead of what the usual run of statistics we get. One thing that did come out of that is Steve Cobb, our licensing officer, works very closely with the police and other agencies on various aspects in the community safety partnership. And we felt it was vital that the council continues to support this work of the community safety partnerships and other partner agencies we work with, and particularly on delivery of women's safety charter alongside these agencies. And I believe the work has already started on that, and we may already be involved with it. I would wholly recommend to council that we continue to support these, Chair. Thank you.
very much, Councillor Levitt. Are you proposing something in particular, and is that your proposal?
Yes, Chair. I propose, as per the recommendation, the Council continues to support the work of the Community Safety Partnership and other partner agencies and work on the delivery of a Women's Safety Charter alongside these agencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Levitt. Can I please have a seconder on that proposal? Councillor Dennis Harburg.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Very, very happy to second, and thank you to David for his work in scrutiny and everybody else that's looked at the Women's Safety Charter as this is evolving and coming through. I think it's going to be a very important piece of work for us.
Thank you very much. Are there any further comments or debate on this particular item? I am not seeing any indication. Therefore, the recommendation, as Councillor Levitt has stated, is that Council continues to support the work of community safety partnerships and other partner agencies and work on the delivery of a Women's Safety Charter alongside these agencies. Can we please go to the vote?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 9, pay policy statement. Can I please call upon the leader of the council, Councillor Dennis Harburg, to present?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I shall try and be brief, as I'm aware that this is part 1 of my warm-up act for Ian Albert later on this evening. I will boldly assume that these are short papers and everyone's read them. So, in summary, the statement that's attached at Appendix A and its contents are set by legislation. As the pay award for 2023 and 2024 has still not yet currently been agreed, the statement is currently based on the 2022 and 2023 rates. As per recommendation 2.2, delegation is sought so that the statement can be updated as and when the pay award is agreed. The other point I think that's important for us to note is at paragraph 3.10 of the appendix, and this contains an update on the legislation relating to the specific severance payments. Now, we're aware, obviously, that a few councils in a couple of places have chosen to provide staff with a one-off lump sum payment in order to help them face the cost of living crisis this year. However, North Herts is part of the national pay negotiations, and so we're not allowed to make payments like that. We cannot go beyond the terms of those things that are agreed within the National Employers Scheme. However, at this council, because we really, really do value our staff, over the last year, we've looked at and we've examined the package of benefits that we provide to people who work for us. And we've increased the support that is available to people to help them get through this particular crisis. One of the things we've introduced, for example, is the introduction of salary loans to meet those very sudden and unexpected expenses that might arise from time to time. So despite the fact that to a certain extent, our hands are tied by being part of the National Employers Group, we are finding ways where possible to meet the needs of our staff and help them through this difficult period. I will, however, quite happily propose these recommendations, and I'll pass over to Ian Cooper, who might provide any additional technical points that you might wish to hear this evening, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dennis Harburg. So just to confirm, you're proposing the statement as is written, well, according to the recommendations. Perfect. Can I please have a seconder then? Councillor Brown.
Happy to second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. Is there any debate? Councillor Munser.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question, possibly for Mr. Cooper. 12.7% seems quite substantial and I think quite unrealistic. But I would just be interested to know, when are members likely to hear the outcome of these negotiations with the unions?
Mr. Cooper, if you could take that question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Funny enough, today the employers have put forward a offer to the unions. It is less than 12.7%, and Councillor Albert will be covering that in his budget speech around the implications of that offer. Obviously, it's now down to the unions to respond to that offer made by the employers.
Thank you. Councillor Munster, did you want to add anything? Thank you very much. Councillor Brown, Councillor Dennis Harburg, did you want to reply on that? Okay, so we will move to the vote with the recommendations being: 1, that the council approves the 23-24 pay policy statement attached to Appendix 1, and 2, that council delegates authority for revisions made in year to the pay policy statement to the Service Director of Resources in consultation with the leader of the council. Revisions which might arise in the year include changes in structure, changes to employment benefits, subsequent pay awards agreed nationally, and new legislative requirements. Could we please go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 10. Before we start, please note that I have granted one lucky person, Councillor Albert, in fact, lucky all of us, to speak for longer than 5 minutes. Can I please call upon the leader of the council, Councillor Dennis Harburg, to introduce this motion? Councillor Dennis Harburg to introduce.
Yes, thank you very much. And as trailed, this is part 2 of the warm-up act for Councillor Ian Albert. So, colleagues, this evening, the council has the duty to set our budget for the forthcoming year. If you cast your minds back to September 2021, we set out our vision for the council and also the district. And when we redid our council plan, which was praised by Overview and Scrutiny, an opposition-led Overview and Scrutiny, we made sure that that was deliberately a medium-term plan, despite central government insisting on only providing local authorities with short-term financial certainty, and therefore nothing within our council plan and the approach that we are taking to delivering services for residents has changed. Our priorities remain that we will put people first, and we will be a sustainable, both economically and in terms of the environment, council, and we are going to work together to build a brighter future. The council plan and the medium-term financial strategy go hand in hand with each other. This ensures that our priorities and our resources are aligned, and it also ends that cycle of budget-led policy making of past administrations. These overarching strategic visions underpin every single thing that we do as a council, and they inform our budgeting choices, planning not just for the next 12 months, looking to when the next election is, but looking years into the future to ensure that we shape a fairer, greener North Herts. Now, whilst our plan remains unchanged in what it's trying to achieve, the reality of a cost of living crisis and other pressures with inflation, which has now reached over 11%, means that our financial position has substantially changed from where we were in 2021 when this plan and some of its deliverables were devised. The budget we're proposing tonight continues the journey that we set out on in that council plan, and it sets out how we will fund the projects we intend to deliver over the course of the next 12 months. Unfortunately, we can't deliver everything that we would like to, as the world has changed since we scoped those initial timelines. This is a result of multiple factors which are beyond our control. You'll all be familiar with them. We've got to plan on the basis of new government funding formulas, which will reduce funding that we can retain from business rates. We have to try and plan with very little certainty over what our future funding is actually going to look like. What other business operates on the basis of a one-year final settlement and the amount of uncertainty local government constantly has to tolerate? We also have to factor in record-breaking levels of inflation. It's the highest it's been since before I was born, and dealing with the impact on both the council and our residents of that. We have to plan and see what the ongoing impacts of COVID-19 are going to be too. We're therefore working on the assumption that we will need to be able to deliver around £2.5 million of savings every single year by 2027-28. These could come from efficiencies, service transformations, excuse me while my iPad glitches, or income generation, or anything else. We are committed to the promises that we've made in the past and that we will continue to make to residents and to colleagues, but I need you to know that it is going to take us longer to deliver the things we want to deliver for you. Unfortunately, over a decade of austerity means that opportunities for efficiencies are pretty much gone. There's no more fat left to trim. We will continue to focus on service transformation in order to improve the way that people interact with this council, and we will also do our best to save some money. We remain committed to developing additional and new sources of income, although we have to be realistic about what can be achieved given the economic effects of ongoing austerity, which is now morphing into that cost of living crisis, and COVID-19. We therefore have to plan on the basis that we might need to deliver a significant amount of savings via service changes. And the very, very harsh reality is, colleagues, that if we want to be a council that delivers the services our residents value and is sustainable in the medium term, we have to increase our element of the council tax. The funding government allows us so graciously to retain is determined on the basis that we will increase our council tax by the maximum allowed without a referendum. We also must propose that the council tax element for this council is increased on that basis, which is in line with our medium-term financial strategy. This means that it needs to increase by 2.99% this year, or about 14 pence per week for a Band D property, with the increases on other bands pro rata based on that. Colleagues will be aware of the increases that the County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner is making to their shares of the overall council tax bill, and they will be aware that they are taking a larger cut, whereas this council's proportion of the overall council tax bill continues to decrease. We shared our draft budget proposals with all members in various budget workshops in November, and we've asked for contributions and ideas for the ways that we can save money by spending less, delivering more, or generating income. I'm not certain whether or not the opposition has put an alternative budget, and certainly I don't think that we've had prior to this meeting notice of any amendments that they would be looking to make, and there was nothing that came through from those workshops as a concern that we would be able to act collaboratively on. I do hope that the level of participation, and I'm assuming given the lack of sort of negative response that we've received so far, colleagues, does mean that we will hopefully be able to reach an agreement on the budget that we are putting forward tonight, which I do believe is a reasonable balance, treading that very fine tightrope that we must between short and medium term focuses. And I will now hand over finally to the main act this evening, Councillor Albert.
Thanks, Councillor Dennis Harburg. Councillor Albert.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. And thank you, Chair, for allowing me some additional speaking time this evening, and I'm sure Councillor Bloxham will be looking forward to that. And also, I'd like to thank Ian Cooper and all his team for pulling together the papers you have in front of you. In addition, I'd like to thank Sam North, who's been the Deputy Executive Member over the last 4 years. This evening, the Council is required to set a budget for 23-24. In doing this, we must always be mindful of prudence and care in our decision-making, something this joint administration has prided itself upon in financial matters since we took control of the Council. But we must also consider the impact of any decision we make on the ability to set a balanced budget over the medium term, especially when government has not been able to settle on how it wants to fund local government for the future. None of us will ever forget the last 3 years with the pandemic that hit the world, and for anyone who's lost a loved one who's been seriously ill with COVID, or indeed still suffering from long COVID, those impacts remain real and continuing. And I want to pay tribute to all the members present, cross-party here, who've worked so hard to help their local communities. And on this night especially, I want to remember 3 people who should have been in this room with us now. Paul Clark, Gary Grindle, and of course my amazing friend and colleague Judy Billing, who would be moaning already that I was taking too long. This budget stands alongside, as Elizabeth Dennis-Harberg has said, and complementary to our medium-term financial strategy, our council plan and our council delivery plan. Residents will be able to see clearly how we're progressing on those key priorities set by this administration. And that council delivery plan has been welcomed by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Now, in my budget speech last year, I started by saying that I was hopeful that the main financial impacts of COVID had gone away, but I also said it was still having a lasting and real impact on the council's finances. That remains true. This year, while those impacts have subsided, they're definitely still there. It's positive to see how the demand for our leisure services is growing and returning towards 2019 levels. Over the next year, we'll see how some other of the changes in working and shopping patterns have altered and altered behaviour, particularly around long-term and long-stay parking income. But last year, I also spoke about how that we were seeing the impacts of inflation that had then just gone over 5%. Then we had the tragic invasion of Ukraine, and for which the people of North Herts have sent its solidarity and support and welcomed many Ukrainian people into our homes and community. Sadly, that invasion sent energy prices through a dramatic climb. And whilst we've now seen the peak, that was over 11%, inflation is still around 10%, and indeed food and material inflation over 16%. Now, none of this was helped by the attempt at destroying the economy embarked upon in the autumn by former Prime Minister Truss. The country will not forget the damage done by the Conservative government to so many people. The cost of living crisis is having a profound impact on us and our residents, and we've worked with local community groups and the County Council to continue the networks that were started during COVID to help with food provision and now energy costs. Our contract prices are linked to inflation, and you'll see we're paying, as you'll see in Appendix C of the report, an additional £1 million this year. Our utility costs are driven by market conditions, though we mitigate some of the worst impacts through value for money energy plans. And then there is the hugely difficult balance of pay inflation. We're part of the National Joint Council, looking at pay, pensions, and main terms and conditions. These are not things that we negotiate locally. Overall, employers have to balance affordability with a fair deal for staff that helps us attract and retain the people that we need. Now, as Ian Cooper said earlier on, the employers have today put forward a pay offer that is again based on a lump sum rather than a percentage increase. The timing of that announcement has meant that it's not been possible to determine the impact on council budgets, but it could be more than the 4% budgeted for. There is also the potential for the union to reject the proposal and seek a higher increase. This was flagged as a risk in our budget report, and any pay award above 4% will need to be funded from an additional use of reserves and will, all other things being equal, increase the total savings requirement. And in future years, and that will obviously affect and bring forward the timing for delivery of those savings. Now, the Service Director of Resources has confirmed this evening that our resources are sufficient to adopt the budget as presented. But let's be clear, we support the right of workers to negotiate and take strike action when necessary as a last resort. We don't believe the government should legislate on this. Government should get involved to help resolve disputes, not shout from the sidelines. Now, on the other side of the equation, even where we could increase our fees and charges to reflect increases in costs, we need to be mindful of our residents' ability and willingness to pay for that increase. Therefore, we've been limiting the levels of any increase with the knowledge that it is widening our gap. Our car parking charges went up by 2% overall in November, with season tickets frozen to help those working in our towns. This contrasts, for example, with Conservative controlled Welwyn and Hatfield, who are increasing annual season tickets in April by up to 37.5%. 3-month season tickets up by 90%, and resident street parking permits up by 33%. And in East Herts, they're introducing Sunday charging, and evening charges will be put in place up to 8 p.m. That is not something that this council is doing. The North Herts Council garden waste charge will go up in October after the May and summer season. There will be no further increase until April 2025 as both an incentive and to bring it in line with the start of a new waste contract. This is a real saving for our residents. And this contrasts with other neighbouring Conservative controlled council where the charge will be increasing by nearly 25% from April. Our allotment charges will go up by 4%, significantly below inflation, and a recognition of the valuable service this is to our communities. My aspiration is that in next year's budget statement, we will bring to full council, as far as we can, the full list of fees and charges that we can approve locally. This is a complex area though, and we will need to work through all the implications, as not all charges in our gift to decide or are currently executive functions. We would also need to potentially consider the drafting of appropriate constitution amendment for agreement by council. Now, as you'll be aware, council tax levels are not just a local decision, are in effect set by government. We could have a debate about setting council tax levels at less than the 3% cap. Ideally, we want a position to do this, but that would not be prudent and it would leave us with a difficult financial position in the coming years. And I'm not prepared to do this or put our council at risk. There's not a single district or borough across Hertfordshire proposing a freeze in council tax, no matter which party is in control. The government has built its calculations and announcements about council's core spending power on the clear assumption and pressure that we will put up council tax by the maximum allowable. Now, I read the other day that one of our local MPs put out a message the other day talking about all the additional money that government had confirmed that councils had to spend. What he failed to tell anyone, though, that most of this comes not from government grants, but from increases in council tax. Now, I've said before about failing to increase council tax means an ongoing cut in funding that you can never get back. I wish it was not necessary to make this difficult choice, but I am proud that this joint administration has put in place a new council tax reduction scheme that means our poorest households don't have to pay any council tax from the 1st of April. Now, the change in the council tax reduction scheme covers all council tax. And as Councillor Dennis Harburg highlighted, the county council element, which is going up by just under 5% or £76 for a Band D, and the police and crime commissioner element, which is going up by 6.7% or £15 for a Band D. And it's worth reminding members that these charges are significantly more than the £7.50 a year of the North Herts Council proposed council tax increase. And that's 14 pence a week. And for yet another year, the North Herts Council share of what you pay in council tax continues to fall to around 12% of the total. The general grants and funding we get from government is a little better than we forecast, but still below inflation. While there's been some effort to provide information on what our funding might be in 24-25, we're still likely to be waiting until the end of the autumn for any certainty, and perhaps longer. Beyond 24-25, we're completely in the dark, as that will be a new spending review cycle. Now, since this joint administration took office, we've had seven secretaries of state responsible for local government. Admittedly, that was Michael Gove, recycled several times. Government often question why council have reserves. It's because we have no certainty from the top of government and because we're required to set balanced budgets, with funding announcements just a few months before the start of the year and limited support when crises hit. Despite these challenging forecasts, we have done as much as we can to avoid damaging cuts and invest in this council and the priorities that we set in our council plan. Some of these have had to be one-year commitments to reflect the financial situation, but some will last longer. They're set out in full in Appendix B. £20,000 for the extension of the outdoor pool season at Letchworth. Got match funding for a resource of £30,000 to develop an integrated and sustainable transport plan with Network Rail and Herts County Council in Hitchin, and including the potential new entrance to Hitchin Station. £25,000 for the continuation of our Economic Development Officer role, alongside the development of a new enterprise strategy. £50,000 to support the work of North Herts CVS, the Minority Ethnic Forum and Citizens Advice, who do such crucial work for our community. £30,000 over 3 years for further work in support of the extension of the Chiltern area of outstanding national beauty. And I think that's something cross-party that we can all support. £40,000 over 3 years for sustainable travel town implementation plans in Letchworth and Royston. Additional money for planning enforcement, additional money to help support work in developing and for the next local plan and undertake town centre strategy work. £50,000 to actually work with the county council to incorporate the rural areas into the local cycling, walking and infrastructure plan. And £100,000 we're proposing for the creation of a community wealth fund with that additional income we're receiving in year one because of that extra 1% increase on council tax. It will reinvest money in our community and be open to be bids from local groups for projects that have a sustainable and measurable impact on the local area. Now, those are many more initiatives that I don't have time to cover tonight, but I do hope our Conservative colleagues, and if you are planning to oppose the budget, tell us which initiatives you wouldn't like us to do. Tell us what you would do differently. Tell us how you would fund it. It is disappointing that we haven't had those proposals through the budget process. Now, overall, broadly, we're in the same position as when we set the medium-term financial strategy. We're facing the prospect of needing to find 2.5 million of annual savings within the next 5 years. This will be hard to achieve, especially alongside major new contracts on waste and leisure. But we're well placed due to the careful and prudent use of our reserves to manage this challenge. The report sets out a number of risks in the section starting at 8.27 that could affect the level of savings and when they need to be delivered. But as I said just now, based on current estimates, the use of reserves allows us to wait for more funding certainty and to hopefully get past the worst impacts of the cost of living crisis. But we do need to be ready to take difficult decisions when the time comes. We can't pretend that level of savings will come from efficiencies. We've faced too many years of real-term funding cuts for that to be realistic. Now, if I move the recommendations in front of you and ask to approve this budget, I just need to take you through a couple of other areas of the report. Paragraph 5.2 refers to the statutory requirement to consult business ratepayers. I can confirm we've not had any feedback. Paragraph 7.3 details the changes made to the budget since it was considered by Cabinet. Biggest impact is the contractual support that we're likely to need to provide to Stevenage Leisure in relation to their energy costs. Paragraph 8.19 to 8.21 detail how the recommended minimal general fund balance is calculated. Specific risks summarised in paragraph 8.19 and detailed in Appendix A are reviewed each year to ensure they reflect the most significant events that could affect the financial position of the council. This includes a challenge of the probabilities and impacts, as well as a cross-check against the risk register. And paragraphs 8.27 to 8.36 set out the review of the budget has been undertaken by our Chief Finance Officer. That confirms the budget as set before you is robust and considers the adequacy of financial reserves. And I'd like to make one more recommendation. As a joint administration, we've been eager to deliver as much as we can for the district. The council delivery plan sets out all those projects, as well as highlighting the issues and risks around resourcing that work, especially with the need to continue to deliver the core and statutory services of the council. Pressure has been felt in many areas. Services such as housing and environment health played a significant part of our response to the COVID pandemic and continue to be affected by the cost of living crisis. Next month, we will be reporting to Cabinet on the Q3 budget position, and that is showing an underspend on staffing due to the difficulty with recruiting to certain posts, with one of those areas being planning. The planning team are working to support our town centre strategies, the effective implementation of the local plan, as well as looking further into the future. We would plan to carry forward that underspend into 23-24 and also further into 24-25 to help fund additional short-term staffing capacity in key areas. As this is short-term staffing around 18 months, I want to be very clear that this is not money. This is not money we could have been used to set a lower council tax increase, which would have a long-term ongoing impact. And my additional recommendation 2.9 would read, that council notes the staff resourcing issues that the council faces, particularly in relation to planning and the strategic implementation of the local plan. Council further notes that the Cabinet and the Head of Paid Service will look at options to make use of available resources, such as the carry forward of unspent salary budgets, to support the delivery of key council functions and priorities. So to conclude, colleagues, I commend the budget statement of this joint administration to you. Many of us saw firsthand during the Hitchin North by-election the strong support for what this administration is doing in North Herts and what our separate parties want to do at county level. And I thank my Liberal Democrat colleagues for not standing a candidate in respect for my dear friend, Judy Billing. In that by-election, we saw a Conservative Party who tweeted hallelujah to come in second with a 10% reduction in their vote. High aspirations indeed. Chair, I'm proud of what this Labour and Liberal Democrat joint administration has achieved collectively for residents since 2019, in the face of the pandemic and then the cost of living crises. Now let's move on towards a district where we will continue to put people first, deliver sustainable services and enable a brighter and, dare I say, greener future together. I'd like to move the recommendation set out in paragraph 2 on the paper on page 39 and move the council the recommendations 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 and move the council approves recommendations 2.4 to 2.8 as set out in the paper. And as I mentioned earlier, I move that new recommendation 2.9 on staffing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. I think I've lost a few bets there with the being under 20 minutes in length, but thank you very much for being concise. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Dennis Harberg.
Thank you very much, Chair. Happy to second and reserve my right to speak on that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dennis Harberg. Is there any debate? Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you for keeping it a little bit shorter than you did last year, Councillor Ian Albert. And I did check my inbox, and normally you send me a copy of your speech, but I couldn't actually find it. So I don't know whether it's gone into my spam folder or you didn't send it to me this year. But anyway, I no doubt will be able to read it at a later time. Obviously, a very interesting speech. A lot of it, I think, was a reworking of last year. Let's blame the government. It's all their fault. We have got to close our budget, and it's so difficult. Well, when this Conservatives on this side, we were in control of the council, we had difficult times, but we don't recall that we spent such a lot of time saying how difficult it was and let's blame the government and all that for everything, because we just got on with the job and put in a fair budget. Now, you have said all the way through here in that you haven't heard an alternative budget or whatever, and that nothing has been brought forward. Well, we have brought forward some of the things from this side that we didn't like. And unfortunately, whenever we do bring those concerns, they fall on dead ears. So the concerns we had was, yes, parking charges. You have said in your speech that overall it's only 2%. Well, that might be an overall, but in some areas of the district, it's nearly 16%. So for those residents, certainly to help them meet their cost of livings, that's not going to help them. Yes, you've talked about going to the maximum of increasing the council tax by 3%. One thing you forgot to mention in your speech is that you've actually, on your side of the chamber, decided that members' allowances should be increased by 6%. Again, that was something that was not supported by this side of the chamber. Yes, in the last 3 years, times have changed, and we do need to look at how we deliver those services, and we do need to look at where we can make those efficiencies. We have two major contracts coming forward in this next period coming forward. That's for the waste and for leisure. One doesn't know the outcomes of those, but one thing that you as an administration did have the control over is what the fees and charges are going to be for the garden waste charging. And for the two of you, and I'm going to mention it again, for councillors that campaigned that they were going to scrap the tax, you're not only putting it up over an inflation, but you would have had an opportunity when we go through and take out a new contract to remove all waste charges. Perhaps the government will actually do that for you. You never know. Yes, you have a duty to provide a balanced budget, and there are some elements in this budget that one is quite happy to see that, yes, you've extended the outdoor swimming for Letchworth, but what about Hitchin? If you're going to do it for one of the outdoor pools, it would have been nice, I'm sure, for the residents of Hitchin that you also gave them some additional evenings so that they could swim, which is something that they have also asked. There is also there's also the plans that we need to look at for the other big project, and that's Churchgate. And one can see now in the expenditure and papers that actually you've not put any money down in your budget. It's just going to be a sort of, I suppose, wait and see. I can only say that I do hope that if it is going to be a wait and see project on Churchgate, it's not going to turn out into something that's going on down in Croydon, because the Labour administration there obviously has having to increase their council tax by 15% to take account of the disaster, and I think that's a good word for it, of the investment that they had made in commercial property. So no, I'm afraid it's your budget, so it's up for you and your members to support you rather from this side. But I'm sure my members will have some comments that they also want to make on what you've presented tonight, and I look forward to receiving a copy of your speech.
Thank you very much, Councillor Strong. Is there any other comment or debate? Councillor Willoughby.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Willoughby, just sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Just before you begin, we have a slight distraction in the back corner. If I could ask that be turned off.
Well, some people get bored, I suppose,
Councillor
Chair.
Willoughby, yeah.
Have to find some
I'm glad
entertainment.
that some are paying attention. Thank you, Councillor Willoughby.
Thank you, Chair. I think, we are in a remarkably privileged position to be sitting in this chamber and going to set out a financial plan for this district. I think we have to take it seriously. And I certainly would like my colleagues across the chamber to take it seriously. I think with the cost of living crisis raging on, we're seeing people struggling to pay their energy and gas bills, even as these companies have tripled their profits. We're seeing people, that's vulnerable people, struggle to heat their homes, struggling to afford food for families. We're seeing parents unable to afford to clothe their children or buy school uniforms. We're seeing our communities going through one of the harshest economic climates that could possibly be inflicted on them. And unlike the pay more, get less national government, we are providing more. We are refocusing our balanced budget to where it is most needed during these crises across different service areas. We have to increase council tax, but only so we can keep on providing these vital services to our communities. We are between a rock and a hard place as national government continue to under and defund local authorities across the country and give out grants on an almost beauty contest or Hunger Games basis, while we try to maintain essential services. We cannot afford our communities to suffering, starving, freezing in their homes, or even worse, on the street. We cannot afford allowing communities to merely survive, but instead we have to empower them to live and thrive by providing them places to enjoy, events and parks to play in. It is our job, and absolutely the job of every level of government, to make people's lives better. If our communities want barren towns and barren parks, then they can listen to the group across the chamber. But if they want to see North Herts go further to improve their lives and empower our community, then they can follow what our administration is doing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Willoughby. Councillor Munter.
Thank you, Chairman. And I must say, when I was hearing members of the administration referencing the comments I made at the full council last month, I had hoped that they would have listened to some of the suggestions and the concerns which were raised. But alas, that is not the case. Now, as a Conservative, I believe in a small state and low taxes. And when that translates into local government, that means that local government is about providing high quality, essential statutory services which are efficient, effective, and mean that taxpayers get good value for money, because ultimately it is residents' money is better in their own pockets than the coffers of the council. Now, the administration is proposing an increase by the maximum that is allowed without the need for a local referendum. So the question that I was asking myself when I was reading through the budget papers was, are residents going to see a positive practical impact for this increase? And the conclusion that I came to was no. Because the fact of the matter is, in North Hertfordshire, under Labour and the Liberal Democrats, their policy is for residents to pay more and get less. And let's just take a look at their record and what they intend to do. Because under them, council tax is up, car parking fees are up, the garden waste charge is up, something which they pledged and promised to scrap. But they've increased it not once, but twice. We're seeing waste collections going to be cut. We've seen millions of pounds of taxpayers' money spent on a dilapidated shopping centre with no clear financial plan. So whilst residents are going to be on average nearly £100 worse off because of this budget, last month we saw Labour and Liberal Democrat councillors increasing council allowances by 6%, meaning that they're going to be better off by £300. And unfortunately, it seems that this administration is not taking its statutory responsibilities seriously enough. Because when you look at waste collections, for example, we are going to be implementing one of the worst waste collection rotas in the whole of the east of England for the sake of saving £270,000. Now, I must say, with a total budget of £18.5 million, one would have thought that we would have been able to make savings and efficiencies elsewhere in order to ensure that our residents get high quality public services. But no, Labour's policy, Lib Dem policy, is to pay more and get less. And then we look at Churchgate. We're constantly told that it's a blank canvas. Now, I certainly hope that a blank canvas doesn't equal a blank cheque, because that is something that residents in North Hertfordshire cannot afford. And I'm quite shocked, quite frankly, not to see any budget or funding set aside for this project, which is going to be in the tens of millions of pounds. So whilst we are seeing these increase in council tax, I'm proud of the Conservative administration at County Hall, because thank goodness we have them, because they are in touch with the priorities of residents in Hertfordshire. Well, you might laugh, but it is true, because we're making sure that we're funding all of the essential services. We're making efficiencies. I believe it's £27 million worth of efficiencies. Perhaps the executive member, now he's up at County Hall, can learn something from Councillor Bob Deering and Councillor Richard Roberts.
Thank you, Councillor Munster. Councillor Albert, did you get those names? Perfect. Councillor Mason.
So I'm left speechless, to be fair. To quote a great woman I once knew, I wasn't going to say anything, but just a couple of. I noticed Councillor Strong said that when the Conservative were controlling the council, they just got on with it. Could I point out to them they're now in opposition? Those two things may be connected. The honourable member for Kempston talks about a dilapidated shopping centre. Who let it become dilapidated? On your watch. On your watch. I'm really intrigued. Councilman, this pay more, get less. I mean, that's probably the worst surprise of the night, that particular punchline. I think we've seen that one a few more times. Pay more, get less. What exactly are you proposing as an alternative? Because I assume the opposite of pay more, get less is pay less, get more. How? Where are you getting? How are people going to pay less and still get the level of services we're getting now? Where is that money coming from? Are you going to drill for oil on Butts Close? Perhaps you're searching for that magic money tree. I know. Perhaps it's on the forecourt of Hitchin railway station. That's what you were looking for every Saturday for the last month. The point is, for the sake of democracy and for this borough to be run properly, we need an effective opposition. And it's no point you just sitting there with empty slogans and empty rhetorics. The way it works is the administration puts forward a budget, and Councillor Albert, in my opinion, has done that extremely competently today. But as an opposition, you then put a coherent alternative to it. You say, well, no, we don't agree with that. We think you're paying too much. We think you're providing us. So here's our alternative. Only you never do that. I mean, we were spared bin lids, I suppose, this time. We should be merciful for that. But where is your alternative? Seriously, you can just sit there and mouth platitudes, or actually be in opposition and actually oppose, and do us all a favour.
Thank Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Plater.
I fear Councillor Mason has rather stolen my thunder there. However, I want to say that I think this is a absolutely fantastic budget. It does some incredible things for the people on North Herts on what is effectively a shoestring. I'd remind members that central government grants were cut by £15 billion across councils in England in the decade between 2010 and 2020. And that's not accounting for the next 3 years that have been impacted by COVID as well. But we are still delivering. I look at this budget, and over the next decade, I see 4.5 million on developing our green spaces. I see another 2 million on making sure that our museum storage is world class. I see Churchgate bringing in £84,000 of extra revenue a year before we've got the answers from the consultation from residents, and have worked with them to develop Churchgate into something that everybody can be proud of. And I see almost 2 million on playground renovation across the district, making sure that our children have a place to play for decades to come. And this pay more, get less. As Councillor Albert said, parking is going up by 2%, well below inflation. Allotments, 4%, well below inflation. Council tax will be raised by 14p a week, well below inflation. With North Herts Council, it's not pay more, get less. It's North Herts Council gets less and does more. And I want to touch on councillors' allowances for a little bit, because councillors' allowances allow people from all walks of life to become councillors. It doesn't matter whether you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth or whether you were raised without that privilege. Because of the allowances, you can become a councillor and have a say in your local democracy. And to be honest, from the comments made by the Conservatives tonight, it is quite clear that they do not value working people in this council chamber. It's not do as I say, and it's not do as I say, not do as I do. How can you sit there and defend that? I find the issue about the waste quite funny as well, because as I'm sure members watching on YouTube, and I hope council members will know, is that actually the waste contract is a joint contract with East Hertfordshire Council, who is run by, the Conservatives. So in fact, the waste collections and the waste contract that they seem to talk about as a Labour and Lib Dem policy is actually a Labour, Lib Dem and Conservative policy. They might have wanted to have a conversation with their friends in East Hertfordshire as well before they started attacking us on that. As for low tax, we have the highest tax burden, I believe, since the war nationally, and the National Party, the National Conservative Party in government, is predicating that its council budget on the fact that councils actually raise their council tax. We're being pressured into raising our council tax. I'm sure everybody in this chamber would love to see council tax frozen and our residents not have to pay any more. But if we want to continue delivering services, it's not feasible. And maybe the other party in the chamber should go back to their friends in national government and have a conversation about that. At the end of the day, we're delivering a budget that is balanced, that works for the people of North Hertfordshire. And to be quite honest, there is no substantive motion. There's no shadow budget from the other side. If they actually want to do something to help, and if they want to get elected, they might actually start doing some real work and perhaps showing that they might actually be able to run the council, because at the moment, I think it's pretty clear they are far, far away from that. And we are here delivering for the people of North Hertfordshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Plater. Councillor Muir.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to bring notice of an item in this table paper. On the back of the second page at the bottom, it's got Western Hills Baldock, resurfaced car park off Limekiln Lane. Now, I know every foot of Baldock, and there's no car park off Linecombe Lane.
Thank you, Councillor Muir. I believe unless there's anybody that wanted to raise an objection to what Councillor Muir said, we have to go by what is in the appendix and assume that it either there is a car park or it relates to a car park in that vicinity. I'm not seeing anyone or any officers indicate that they wanted to come in on that. So we're going to continue on the basis of there being a car park in or around that area that relates to. Okay, thanks, Councillor Muir. Yeah, Councillor Albert.
Sorry, I mean, I'm more than happy that we should come to that. But shall we come to that under the right item? Because that is about investment strategy, and that is the paper to do with our capital programme and not our revenue budget. But yeah, by all means, Councillor Muir makes a perfectly reasonable point, and we'll happily sort of check into it. But this isn't the right item for that.
Thanks, Councillor Albert. Is there any other debate? Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, we had an entertaining speech from Councillor Munster, didn't we? Which he demonstrated he's the sort of Conservative that believes in the disastrous economic policies that were briefly pursued for a while last autumn, which even the present Conservative administration couldn't continue to justify. He also made a number of points of comparison, but unfortunately, he clearly hasn't read the papers. If he had, he would note that the 2.7% of savings identified by the County Council he highlighted is significantly less than the 6.9% of budget reductions from efficiency proposals that are identified on page 63 of the papers here tonight. So the County Council, far from doing much better than this administration, has actually done less than half as well. He also commented on Churchgate, and it's a bit rich, really, any of the Conservatives commenting on Churchgate, having prevaricated and done nothing with it other than waste the council's money for more than 20 years. But he clearly failed to notice that there's £84,000 a year of income coming as a result of the decisions the council has made there. I think that there certainly is some positive practical impact. And the areas that particularly concern me are those in the area of leisure and environment. And I'm very pleased that we've managed to extend the opening of the Letchworth open air pool. We did it this year as an experiment, working with members of the community. They commended it. It cost significantly less than we anticipated. And I understand that there were a few open air swimmers who made the journey all the way from Hitchin to Letchworth in order to use the open air pool. And they commented that this was so much more convenient than travelling to Cambridge or London. So I think the fact we're opening one open air pool for an extended season is something we should be proud of. And I'm glad that we're going to be able to do it again in the coming year. And I wish that we could commit to do it in the long term, but for all the reasons that Councillor Albert has set out, we will have to do that on a year-by-year basis. I'm also very pleased that we're able to be putting some more funding into the council's sustainability objectives, to put in a project manager who will be responsible for driving forward what we're trying to do on climate change. And that will not only deliver environmental benefits, but as we've heard, the council has a substantial energy bill, and saving carbon will also save the council money. So I think those are just two small examples of where we are having a positive practical impact on the residents of North Hertfordshire. Now, in the present circumstances, it's clearly regrettable that we don't have to charge them more money for it. But that's unfortunately the only way in which the council can make ends meet and continue to make a positive practical impact for the people of North Hertfordshire in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Morris.
Good Chairman. And I thought a good example of paying more and getting less is paying 4.35 million for the lease for Churchgate, then receiving just a few £1,000s as rental, and then not having a clue as to what you're actually going to do with the place. That said, as I said before, it needs to be rejuvenated, but it doesn't add up at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't been a councillor for very long, but I did start off in opposition. And I, like Councillor Albert, am proud of this budget. And one of the reasons I'm proud of this budget is I can remember that far back, that in those budget meetings, that it was largely budget-led policy making, and we have switched that to policy-led budgets. And I think that is a really significant change, so that our budget aligns with the council plan, the council vision, and the medium-term strategy. So all of those things are aligned, and that's something that has been done under this administration, and that I am proud of. And just coming to some specific points, we were offered an extra % by government, so with 2.99 instead of 1.99, and we've chosen to put that extra % into a community wealth fund, and I'm proud of that, because we are going to be supporting our communities, the most vulnerable, the community organisations, with that additional money, rather than putting it into our main budget. And I just want to respond to some of the things around parking. So the overall parking increase was 1.9%, so actually less than 2%, and it's well below inflation. Yes, there were some rises of 16%. In Royston, the 1 hour charge went up by 10p, and it was 16%, but it was literally 10p on the 1 hour charge. We chose to do that, and we've already seen the benefits of it. People staying longer, spending more time in our town centres. So we have data on that we've collected, and we know that that is working. So that was a move that we deliberately chose to decrease the gap between a 1 hour and the longer stay, in order to help the recovery of our town centres, which is something we hear a lot from residents that they want. And obviously we'll be working more on that through town centre strategies. And I just finally wanted to say, just to re-emphasise what Councillor Albert said about the Hitchin rail station Eastern Access. We unfortunately were unable to bid for the Levelling Up Fund 2 because the timescales were very short and quite unrealistic from government. We want to be ready for the next round of funding, so we're putting money, 30,000, into that, and we're very pleased that Herts.cc have confirmed this week that they are matching that funding with an additional 30,000. So we are going to be working up a proposal. We're going to have a wider scope about east-west active travel across Hitchin to make it much wider than just a station access, but to include that. And I'm very pleased that Herts County Council are supporting us in that objective. So I would commend this budget to you, and I hope you will support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Is there any more debate? Councillor Hinchliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to briefly echo the challenge put by my colleagues to Conservative councillors tonight, who have taken the opportunity to oppose every serious option our administration has proposed to secure the higher income we need in order to deliver a prudent and balanced budget. Presumably, Councillor Muntzer would prefer if we pursued the well-trodden path of Tory fiscal incompetence demonstrated by the disaster instigated by their colleagues in Thurrock Council. But to turn to the content of the proposals brought by Councillor Albert tonight, I'd just like to focus my comments in particular on praising the plan for a community wealth fund in this budget. I think this is a really excellent idea, which I hope will open new opportunities for residents in Royston and across North Hertfordshire. And I think that giving our residents the chance to bring forward their own plans for projects they want to see shows that the Labour Lib Dem administration is really ambitious for our district and is properly committed to empowering our residents.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hinchliffe. Councillor Allen.
Do that again.
I am a disabled counsellor. I'm autistic and have ADHD. And that means there's a lot of things involved where I would struggle in general employment and things like that. But this is a job I can do and I can do well.
Welcome back. How can I help you?
Ah, thank you, Sarah. Well, you can start by explaining to me exactly where £300 a year extra is from 6%. I don't know where the maths of that, maybe it's Trustonomics. But I could not possibly afford to be able to be a counsellor and look after my family, of which, you know, we're a disabled family, representative of disabled people and neurodivergent people on the council. And locally talk about being neurodivergent quite happily. It's not anything to be ashamed of. But as a family looking after disabled children and additional needs children, being that myself, we're on a lower income and we're on universal credit. And we've been on universal credit. My council allowance might go up by however many few quid a year this is going to be. My universal credit will then just go down. So it kind of balances out anyway. So one authority is paying me more money, I'm getting less money from central government. You need to be representative of the people who live in your authority. And if you are only from one group of people, you aren't truly representative. And by having a council allowance means that you can have people from all walks of life. I'm going to have to stop there. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allen, and thank you very much for sharing. As someone who also has a neurodiversity, I think it's exceptionally brave for you to raise that and speak so frankly in an open forum like this. Is there any further debate? I am not seeing any indication, so I'm going to come back to Councillor Dennis Harburg if you wanted to use your right to reply.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I think, as always, we've had an interesting and lively debate this evening. There are a couple of points that do concern me that I would like to pick up through you, Chair. And it's some of the things that the Leader of the Opposition said about bringing forward ideas and suggestions and possible amendments or ways we could do this budget better, but not being heard, really, really do worry me, because they didn't come forward. What we have had are points made in debates in the council chamber in an adversarial way. The points haven't come through to us via the budget workshops. There's been no alternative budget. There's been no reaching out and working with officers. Officers don't have to share everything that the opposition provides them with, Chair, but they are there to help and assist and to support. And they can then at least let the administration know that this is going on and there is an effective and functioning opposition, and it is there to be your critical friend, administration. And by gosh, if you don't keep on your toes, they are an administration in waiting. Colleagues, I look across the chamber and I do worry about the state of our opposition and its effectiveness. Now, that said, issues around bins, my goodness me, how many times, guys, must we keep doing this same dance? We know that in 2018, before this contract started, we said, if we are elected, we will not go ahead with the brown bin tax. I specifically made that promise because I was the shadow portfolio holder. And then in 2019, when we were looking at potentially taking power, I did have some colleagues who said to me, we need to run that same promise again. And I said, there is no way on earth we are going to say that, because it is not financially viable for us to do this. Once we are in, and that is that. And Labour did not put it on its election leaflets. I can provide colleagues on the other side of the chamber with the literature just to aid their memory in future. The next time it's referenced, colleagues, I will throw it in front of your faces just to close this down. In terms of the new contract coming forward, you will all be aware, because you were invited, I think, to a number of different waste workshops to feed in. And I think there was largely universal agreement around the form of the contract going forward, which was agreed with your Conservative colleagues as a genuine cross-party piece of work. in East Herts. Churchgate, we keep hearing that there's no plan for Churchgate. There is a plan for Churchgate. The opposition knows there's a plan for Churchgate. It's quite clear. We are working with our communities and we are co-designing a facility which is going to sit in the centre of this district and is going to be a key economic linchpin to deliver real benefit across the entirety of North Herts. And for those that are not necessarily versed with how capital expenditure and revenue return works when you're making a financial property transaction, I would urge you to perhaps talk to your esteemed colleague, Councillor Sake, for a lesson on real estate. But we pay more, but we get less. We pay as a council considerably more to deliver the services and to protect the services that our residents want. Let's not forget, colleagues, that those members on the opposite side of this chamber wanted to rip playgrounds out of the hearts of our communities. This side of the chamber, councillors over the course of this year and going forward into next year are going to continue to upgrade our play facilities because we know that investing in children's opportunities to get active and to be outdoors delivers real terms health and well-being benefits, which then relieves the burden on the NHS and other parts of this country's infrastructure. We know the value that local government plays as a first responder, not as an intervention mechanism, but as a preventative mechanism. And we know that we need to invest in our communities. That's why we've created the Community Wealth Fund. And actually, yes, our residents are going to end up paying 0.99% more this year on their council tax. That money is being reinvested, is going back into their communities. We are going to support and facilitate groups coming forward with ways that they can help people in their own local area. So against the backdrop of inflation, which is going up significantly more than this council tax increase, against the backdrop of continued government funding cuts to local government, against the backdrop of zero retention of business rates, against the continued Hunger Games. By the way, Levelling Up Fund Round 3 is coming out. All those local authorities that wasted £25,000 to £30,000 on consultations just to have their bid rejected, get ready because you're going through it again and you're going to be doubling up on your losses. Is that an efficient use of public money, colleagues? I respectfully submit it is not. This authority is doing its best to ensure that where we do have to tax, we tax fairly, and where we spend wisely. We put money back into our communities. North Herts District Council is at the heart of North Herts District. And this Labour and Liberal Democrat joint administration is doing everything we can, despite ongoing central government Conservative chaos and the lack of effective opposition from local North Herts Conservatives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dennis Harbour. Councillor Albert, do you have anything more you wish to add?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's been I mean, I think the first thing to say is, I mean, this isn't February the 2nd. For those of you who know that, the February 2nd is Groundhog Day. Sadly to say, like perhaps on their budget proposals, the Conservatives are 3 weeks late. This is, and it feels like a lot of that. But I would say, let me say one thing, and I would offer an apology to Councillor Strong. I thought that the speech had been sent through to you. That's my fault. I apologise for that, and I'll make sure that you do get a copy. And I'm sorry about that. I'm privileged now to be a member of the County Council. The residents of North Herts and in particular Hitchin North would seem to actually rather like what Labour wants to do for the County Council, and rather rejected the approach by the Conservative candidate, whoever that was, in Hitchin North 2 weeks ago. But when I sat there, and I sat there very quietly at the County Council, as you'd expect, the other day, when the debate came round on members' allowances. And I listened to the chair of the council saying why it was important that we increased and we accepted the independent body on the county council, accepted their recommendations to increase councillor allowances. They're rather larger council allowances at the county council than in North Herts, let me say. And I then thought, well, surely there will be some people in that room, North Hertfordshire Conservative county councillors, who voted against member allowances increasing in North Herts, that are going to stand up there and say, no, we should not. We voted against these allowances going up in North Herts. We cannot possibly agree them going up in Herts County Council. I looked in vain across the room at two colleagues that were sitting behind me here, that they were going to speak against what the leader of the county council was going to do. And there was silence. And that motion to increase the allowances, which I supported, went through without dissent. I'm sorry now that I didn't ask for a recorded vote, but there was no dissent to that. And it's shameful that people can vote one way in this room and can vote a completely different way in another room just because that's the whip that they're getting. How sad that is. That is really sad. That's not something I'll be doing. And absolutely, you can have my assurance of that. Elizabeth Dennis-Hardberg has covered the point about the garden waste charge. I'm sure we'll hear it again, but let's be absolutely clear, that wasn't that the accusations there were again wrong, and we will continue to say they were wrong. I'm not sure where Councillor Munster gets his maths from. He was talking about being £100 worse off. Best of my knowledge, 14 pence a week is never for a year is never going to make you £100 worse off. That seems a slightly odd calculation. Councillor Strong says yes, they used to just get on with the budget, and as Councillor Dennis-Hardberg pointed very clearly out, getting on with the budget was about cutting our playgrounds, something that this joint administration will not do. We will not be closing playgrounds. We will not be doing as some former members of this council went round checking bins in playgrounds to see whether they were the playgrounds were getting much use or not. That's not a good use of time, and that was what the previous administration did. How disappointing is that? I think members here all know, as colleagues have pointed out, that Churchgate we are working with, and we want to work cross-party here in this room and with our residents to actually get a plan for Churchgate, whatever that plan might be. And we had a fantastic response to the consultation recently, and we'll be bringing those points forward and actually sharing those with this council and with our residents, so we can go through to the next stage. That is the right way to do it. And as colleagues have said, the previous administration spent, and my late colleague Judy Billing would probably be using a B word at this moment, to think about what the previous administration did with Churchgate. And you can't just blame Hammersmatch. You were in charge. You are where the buck stops. And you're trying to pass it on to someone else. Chair, I'd like to move the recommendations in this budget. I hope that will be unanimously supported, and I do hope that that's where we go. And I do look forward to actually working with our Conservative colleagues on any of their ideas and proposals they come up with in the future. I move the budget, move those recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Albert. Just for the benefit of the vote, I'm going to read out the recommendations as have been amended. So the recommendations are as follows: that Council 1 notes the position on the collection fund and how it will be funded. 2, notes the position relating to the general fund balance, and that due to the risk identified, a minimum balance of £2.5 million was recommended. 3, notes the net revenue savings that are likely to be required in future years, the reliability of estimates and the resilience index. 4, approves the revenue savings and investments as detailed in Appendix B. 5, approves a net expenditure budget of £18.123 million as detailed in Appendix C. 6, approves a council tax increase of 2.99%, which was in line with the provisions in the medium-term financial strategy. 7 approves that the revenue investment for leisure centre condition surveys, as detailed in Appendix B, reference R13, and £10,000 of the consultancy and legal support for the leisure contract, as detailed in Appendix B, reference R37, is brought forward so that it can be spent in 2022-2023. 8 approves an additional revenue investment for 2023-2024 only to create a community wealth fund of £100,000 to support the local community in delivering projects that have wider community benefits. And 9, council notes the staff resourcing issues that the council faces, particularly in relation to planning and the strategic implementation of the local plan. Council further notes that council and the head of paid service will look at options to make use of available resources, such as carry forward of unspent salary budgets to support the delivery of key council functions and priorities. Can we please go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. We are going to take a short break. So can we all please be back in the chamber by 10 minutes past 9, sorry, back to the past. Thank you very much. Thanks. We start heading back to our seats, please, and bringing people in from outside who have disappeared. We take our seats, please. We're going to begin in the next minute. Is there anybody left outside still? It looks like we're all back. Has Councillor Barnard left? He's gone. Okay, when we're ready, we'll go back onto the live stream, please. Thank you very much. Welcome back to everybody on YouTube who is watching. We just took a short break then. So we will move on to agenda item 11. Before we commence, please note that Appendix A1 of the report has been revised and published on ModGov. As highlighted in the report, the timing of the parking payment machines has been brought forward. This has been reflected in Appendix A, but not in Appendix A1. The addendum version of Appendix A1 corrects this single line. You have paper versions of this on the tables in front of you, which the revised version supersedes. Therefore, please refer to the parking machines replacement line on ModGov as featured on the document. Just prior to bringing Councillor Albert in, there was a point raised on a previous agenda item by Councillor Muir. In the break, I took the opportunity to speak with the Service Director for Resources and the Executive Member for Finance and IT, and it has been clarified that the line on Western Hills Baldock refers to a car park on Chalk Hills in Baldock. So thank you, Councillor Muir, for raising that earlier. That gave us the opportunity to clarify. So I will now come to Councillor Albert, please, to present the item.
Cheers, thanks, Chair, and thanks for that clarification around the car park, and obviously thanks to Councillor Muir for raising that. The report brings together for council approval our capital programme and treasury management plans to form an overall investment strategy. As with the revenue budget, our capital spend should be aligned to our corporate priorities and the projects set out in our council plan. But also, as with the revenue budget, a good proportion of our spend goes on maintaining the delivery of our existing services. The paper sets out a capital programme of 8.516 million in 23-24 and 19.144 million across the later years. Makes recommendations on the prudential and treasury indicators that will be monitored and reported on during 23-24. Paragraph 8.12 asks Council to approve the adoption of the Treasury Management Policy Statement, which is the same as last year. Table 6 of the appendix details spend on improving and extending the life of our existing assets, and Table 7 details planned spend on new assets. To highlight some new key investments, we have set aside £400,000 for the refurbishment of Charnwood, the former museum site, into a community hub. We will develop a business case. We will work with local groups to see how best this facility might be run and to maximise the ability to apply for matching external grant funding. We hope to be able to report soon on a museum storage solution. There's £4 million in the budget in total, which only will be fully used if there's a robust business case for adding a commercial museum storage facility. We've included the local authority housing fund application for £543,000 government grant, which will be passed to housing providers to help increase local housing supply. This scheme is specifically aimed at housing people from Ukraine and Afghanistan. We've included £150,000 budget for CCTV camera replacement to keep our communities safe. This follows the recent consultation with area committees and the police. The majority of that money is replacing the fixed cameras to hopefully provide revenue savings, keep them fit for purpose and provide better image quality, but there'll also be some new mobile cameras to increase our flexibility to deal with problem hotspots as they emerge. I hope this is welcome. Following Cabinet, I've set out paragraph 5.4 some changes that were made. These relate to the removal of mausoleum expenditure as the scheme was not viable, a change in forecast spend on household bins, and bringing forward the spend on new car park payment machines to enable pay on exit with a phased implementation from 23-24, which I hope will be welcome. In overall terms, during the course of the planning period, we are investing over £4 million in our leisure centres, including over 700,000 in solar panels, investing nearly £4 million in our green spaces and playgrounds, investing £300,000 in new car parking machines. This joint administration is delivering for North Herts residents. In setting our capital budget, we need to remember that capital spend has a revenue impact in terms of the minimum revenue provision and lost investment interest, both of which impact on the revenue budget. So we need to keep our capital programme under review. This is particularly the case where we're going through a period of high inflation. The second part of the investment strategy sets out how we will invest our surplus cash, which comes from reserves, provisions, capital receipts and cash flow balances. This is broadly the same in structure as last year, just that the forecast of available cash balances is lower. The only specific change to our approach to investments is the sovereign country credit limits that will be applied to non-UK investments. This will allow greater diversification of our investments, but also will be accompanied by other government and societal checks on those countries too. So, Chair, I'm happy to move the following recommendations. 2.1, the Council approves the adoption of the investment strategy as at Appendix A, including the capital programme and prudential indicators, incorporating the changes set out in paragraph 5.4. And in 2.2, we approve the adoption of the 4 clauses in relation to the Code of Practice on Treasury Management as detailed in paragraphs 8.11 to 8.16. I move, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Albert. I'm just going to ask if we can slightly amend the first recommendation to ensure that what I just announced in terms of the addendum version of Appendix A1 can be picked up, and also what the Western Hills details can be changed to the resurface of the car park off Chalk Hills. Are you happy with that if we word that prior to the end of the debate?
Happy to set those amendments, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Please, can I call upon a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Dennis Harburg.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Is there any debate? Councillor Fake.
Chairman, it's not so much a debate as a question of clarification, if I might, please. I clearly may have missed it because I'm not a member of the administration. But on the front sheet of the papers that we're now looking at, under corporate items, is a reference to the council's car fleet. Now, whilst I have absolutely no problems whatsoever in understanding that we have to change to a new accounting standard, it clearly says the council has elected to defer implementation. I don't recall seeing anything coming through full council about that. So can somebody please explain to me which part of the council made that decision? I have no problem with the decision. I just don't understand how it was reached.
Mr. Cooper, could I come to you, and welcome to ask for clarification on exactly the question if you wish?
Yeah, that relates to accounting standards and a provision from the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy that all councils can choose to defer implementation of that particular accounting standard. That therefore rests with me in terms of the provisions of accounting standards in the statement of accounts, and therefore that was my decision, and therefore I'm not going to refer to full council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thate. Was there anything else you wish to add? I don't see. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of questions. We are budgeting to install solar panels in various leisure and swim centres. The first one is Hitchin Swim Centre, which has got a 9-year payback. I don't think there appears to be any payback on the others. I just wondered why that might be. That's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. If you go ahead with your second question, and we can
Thank you.
come back.
Boiler replacements, we're sensibly obviously budgeting to replace boilers. They don't last forever. I assume these boilers are gas at the moment. I've got a little business in London, and we're looking at replacing them gas boilers with either electric or heat pumps. I wondered why, again, the administration says that it cares about the environment. There's no mention of the environment, and why or not we haven't considered looking at either electric heating, as I say, or air or ground source heat pumps. That's my second question. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morris. The first question, I'm going to see if Mr. Cooper wishes to answer, but I believe the second question was more of a point for the administration, so I'll allow debate to continue. And if a member chooses to answer that question in the debate, they may.
Thank you, Chair. It's obviously an omission not to include those as well. From memory, I haven't got the exact details in front of me. They had similar paybacks across all the leisure centres, so in that range of about sort of 10-ish years. But we'll send out clarification about those numbers to all councillors following the meeting.
Thank you. Was there any further you wanted to add, Councillor Morris?
To appreciate it. So the pay, that I think is a pretty normal payback at the moment, sort of 9 or 10 years. If it's the same for the others, then that sounds sensible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back on the point about the replacement of boilers at the leisure centres. What we've done is to defer the placement of boilers in a number of cases, and we will continue to do that where we can. As members will appreciate, there are some significant challenges around the replacement of gas boilers of the size that are necessary to heat a municipal swimming pool. The technology is evolving, and I would hope that we could actually substitute these items for something other than gas boilers by the time we get to the year in which the expenditure takes place. At present, an electrical alternative has some serious issues, not least in terms of running costs. Hydrogen fuel is a potential solution, but hydrogen isn't available in quantity yet. We have investigated the use of heat pumps and PV panels, but there are some issues about the amount of space that's required. So I think it's fair to say that we are looking for the best solution that we can find. At the moment, that would be a better gas boiler with more efficient controls that would reduce our carbon emissions, not eliminate them. But the hope is that we can keep the existing boilers going for long enough that some of the alternatives that Councillor Morris has suggested are viable by the time we have to replace those.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Is there any other debate on the substantive motion? Councillor Morris, I can only call on you if it's a point of clarification or a point of order.
It is a point of clarification. Thank you, Chairman. Electric heating actually is available now. Gas, as we know, does produce a carbon footprint. You can actually buy clean electricity, as we all know. So the alternatives are available now. We don't actually have to wait for them
Councillor
to be
Morris, I don't believe
invented.
that's a
Thank you.
point of clarification. I believe that's a disagreement with Councillor Jarvis's response. Is there any more debate on the item? Councillor Muir?
Have the officers looked at a ground source pump? I've had one for 10 years and it's the best thing since sliced bread. You can have that at the leisure centre in Letchworth. You can go down, drill down and put the pipes up and down. I believe it's 10 meters deep. And that would be a cheap source of energy for the leisure centre.
Thank you, Councillor Muir. Councillor Allen.
I'd ask Councillor Muir to please pay attention to the meeting that's going on, because that has already been discussed.
Is there any further debate? I'm not seeing any, so I will come back to Councillor Dennis Harburg if she had anything further to add. I'm getting a shake of the head. Councillor Albert, was there anything further you wanted to add? No. Okay, so we'll go to the vote with the recommendations as follows. Recommendation 1 being approves the adoption of the investment strategy as per Appendix A as amended, including the capital programme and prudential indicators. This incorporates the changes referenced in paragraph 5.4. Recommendation 2, the council approves the adoption of the 4 clauses in relation to the Code of Practice on Treasury Management as detailed in paragraphs 8.11 to 8.16. Can we please go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. The time is now 9:26. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along tonight. This meeting is closed.